For most of its long existence, Earth was silent. Only wind carved the stone, only fire wrote across its surface. Then as the planet cooled, memory began to take form, not in words, but in layers of sediment, in crystals that recorded the tremors of time. If the Earth could dream, its dreams would be stored in stone. 12,800 years ago, those dreams were interrupted. A wall of ice stretched across half the world, a frozen shield 2 miles thick. Then something came. Fast, bright, uninvited. Fragments of a shattered comet entered the atmosphere, raining fire over the northern hemisphere. The shock melted the ice in torrents. Rivers of glass poured across what is now Canada and Greenland. Oceans rose, continents sank, and within a human lifetime the world changed more violently than ever before. Scientists now call it the Younger Dryas boundary, a geological scar that separates the calm Holocene from the world that came before. Within that thin black layer of Earth lie nanodiamonds, iridium, melted spherules, the fingerprints of catastrophe. The layer runs through the Americas, across Europe, the Middle East, and deep into the seabed. Everywhere it appears, the fossil record breaks. Species vanish, climates reverse, and the traces of early civilization stop abruptly. To ancient peoples, this was the Great Flood, the night the sky burned, the day the waters rose. To modern geology, it is the boundary between worlds. But to the Earth itself, it may be the moment it remembered. Because after that silence, new patterns began to appear. Across the deserts of Anatolia, hunter-gatherers carved stone circles aligned with the stars. Göbekli Tepe, a sanctuary older than the pharaohs by 7,000 years. Each pillar bears the memory of constellations that vanished with the Ice Age. These were not primitive people. They were the survivors of something older. They remembered how the sky once looked before the impact. They carved what they had seen, scorpions, vultures, the falling star, on limestone that still faces the same heavens today. At the same moment in North Africa, the sands of Nabta Playa were marked with standing stones aligned to Sirius and the solstices. In both hemispheres, separated by oceans, human hands built monuments to the sky as if trying to anchor time itself, to make sure the planet would not forget. Perhaps that was the beginning of the architects, those who understood that memory could be built, that the Earth's surface could be turned into a book written in geometry and resonance. When we walk among those ancient stones, we are not visiting ruins. We are stepping into the world's own recollection, a memory the Earth preserved when it began, once more, to remember itself. If you feel the Earth remembering, stay, like, share, and listen for what comes next. Long before the pharaohs raised their obelisks toward the sun, another people watched the same horizon and measured the same stars. They lived not on the banks of the Nile, but across the stone plains of Anatolia and the forgotten edges of the Sahara. No kings, no hieroglyphs, no temples, and yet they built as if they already knew how civilizations would one day remember themselves. Imagine the world then, ice still retreating, rivers just beginning to flow through valleys that had been frozen for millennia. Across the ancient Near East, small bands of hunter-gatherers were learning to farm, to settle, to shape the wild land into something they could call home. But in one hill of southeastern Turkey, something extraordinary was happening, something that defied every timeline of human history we thought we knew. The place was Göbekli Tepe. To the eye, it was just a mound rising above the plain, until German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began to dig in 1994. What his team uncovered changed archaeology forever. Rings of massive limestone pillars, arranged in perfect circles, some standing 6 meters tall, each carved with images of foxes, vultures, scorpions, wild boars, and abstract celestial symbols. Each pillar weighed up to 20 tons, cut, hauled and erected by people who, according to every textbook, should have possessed neither cities nor metal, not even the wheel. And yet here they were, shaping a cosmic temple out of raw stone. When viewed from above, the pillars form concentric rings, their placement too deliberate to be random. Computer simulations later revealed that the central enclosures align with the constellations of Orion, Cygnus, and Sagittarius, the same region of the sky from which many scientists believe fragments of the younger Dryas comet had come. It was as if the survivors of that ancient cataclysm gathered here, at the heart of a quiet continent, to rebuild not merely shelter, but memory. Carbon dating placed Göbekli Tepe around 11,600 years ago, the precise moment the Ice Age ended. Schmidt himself called it the Cathedral on the Hill, a sanctuary so old it predates pottery, writing, and the first pharaohs by over 6,000 years. But why build such a monument only to bury it again? Because the site was intentionally entombed, covered with thousands of tons of earth before being abandoned. Some believe it was a ritual act, sealing sacred knowledge beneath the ground to protect it from the coming ages. And Göbekli Tepe was only the beginning. Just 30 miles away, archaeologists uncovered Karahan Tepe, a site even older, buried under the same Anatolian dust. There, carved human heads emerge from bedrock, their eyes wide open, facing the sunrise, the frozen guardians of a forgotten age. Inside a chamber cut directly into the stone, dozens of phallic monoliths rise from the floor, their smooth surfaces gleaming when sunlight filters through the entrance above. No one knows what rituals took place here, but laser scans show the room's acoustics amplify low frequencies to a resonant hum, a vibration that can be felt more than heard. Archaeologists call it a sanctuary. Others believe it was a chamber of sound, a place where the builders communed not through language, but through resonance itself. To the south, beyond the Nubian desert, another mystery awaited under the burning sky: Nabta Playa. Thousands of years before the first pyramid was conceived, ancient astronomers had placed stone circles on what was once a fertile lake bed. Each standing stone marks the rising of Sirius, the dog star, and the summer solstice. When the Nile flooded, the alignment of the stars signaled renewal. When the stars drifted from their mark, it foretold drought. In these stones lay the first calendars, not written on papyrus, but on the face of the heavens. Even NASA scientists have modelled the Nabta Playa alignment, confirming that its builders tracked the precession of the equinoxes with an accuracy only achieved again in modern astronomy. Think about that for a moment. People who had never seen metal tools measured cosmic cycles spanning 26,000 years. They read time not in days or seasons, but in the slow turning of the stars themselves. They were measuring the pulse of the Earth, the heartbeat of the cosmos. When plotted on a map, Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, and Nabta Playa form a triangle of memory-spanning continents. Each speaks the same silent language of alignment, proportion, and celestial rhythm, and all of them predate Egypt's earliest dynasties by thousands of years. It suggests a lineage of knowledge, not passed through bloodlines or empires, but through symbols, orientation, and vibration. Perhaps these were not isolated cultures at all, but fragments of a single pre-dynastic intelligence, the scattered remains of those we now call the hidden architects of Earth. They understood something we are only beginning to rediscover, that architecture was never only about shelter, but about connection between heaven and ground, between vibration and form, between what is seen and what is remembered. Later, when the first builders of Egypt raised their temples at Abydos, Luxor, and Giza, their blueprints seemed to echo these older sanctuaries. The same geometry, the same devotion to the sky. It was as if the Nile itself had inherited the dream of a vanished world. Even the temple of Dendera, dedicated to Hathor, aligns perfectly with the rising of Sirius, the same star worshipped in the desert millennia before the first hieroglyph was carved. So what does this mean for our history? That Egypt was not the beginning, it was the continuation. A renaissance, not a genesis. The pharaohs claimed divine inheritance because they remembered fragments of a science older than memory itself. A science that measured time in starlight and carved eternity into limestone. And so, before the age of kings, before the first cartouche, there was already an invisible order. A civilization that remembered how to build time into stone. Their monuments whisper through millennia, and every time the wind turns the sand of the Sahara or the plains of Anatolia, a new pattern emerges, as if the earth itself is still trying to recall the architects who once designed it. Across the world, the same marks appear, not written in language, but in weight. Blocks that no modern machine could lift. Walls that curve with the precision of a heartbeat. And always the same silence. No records, no names. Only stone remembering what hands once knew. In the mountains of Lebanon, at a place called Baalbek, lies one of the greatest riddles in ancient engineering. There, 3 colossal stones, each weighing more than 10,200 tons, rest in perfect alignment upon a terrace so old that even the Romans, who later built the Temple of Jupiter atop it, could not explain how the foundation came to be. They called it the Trilithon. Local legends claimed it was built by the gods, a landing platform for celestial beings who commanded the forces of the sky. The sheer scale defies comprehension. Imagine a stone the size of a modern locomotive, carved, transported, and placed with microscopic precision. Not 1 block, but 3, balanced like notes in a chord. And at the nearby quarry lies a 4th, the stone of the pregnant woman, even larger, still half embedded in bedrock, as if the builders had vanished mid-breath. When modern engineers analysed the site, they found no feasible method using Bronze Age tools to lift or move such masses. Even today, with cranes capable of lifting 300 tons, replicating Baalbek's foundation would require a fleet of machines and a level of coordination beyond anything recorded from that era. Yet the terrace stands unmoved by earthquakes, time, or theory. Across an ocean and high into the Andes, another miracle of precision rises above the city of Cusco, Sacsayhuamán. From a distance, its zigzagging walls look like waves of frozen motion. Up close, you see that no 2 stones are the same. Each block is polygonal, curving and locking into its neighbours like a puzzle designed for eternity. There is no mortar, yet the joints are so tight that not even a single sheet of paper can slip between them. When sunlight strikes the walls, the edges shimmer, their faces so smooth they reflect like mirrors of granite. During seismic events that levelled much of modern Cusco, Sacsayhuamán simply flexed and settled back into place. The stones, it seemed, breathed with the earth itself. To the Inca, these were not their works but the inheritance of the Viracochas, the shining ones who, legend says, could move stones by sound alone. Modern researchers have found something equally extraordinary, traces of magnetic anomalies within the rocks, suggesting they were heated to high temperatures, possibly softened through unknown means before being fitted into position. The theory sounds impossible until you stand there, among the walls that ripple like water turned to stone. At the far edge of the Pacific, off Japan's Ryukyu Islands, another enigma waits beneath the waves. The Yonaguni Monument. Discovered by a diver in 1986, it lies 80 feet below the surface, a sprawling complex of terraces, stairways, and angular corridors carved directly into the seafloor bedrock. The structure spans more than 300 meters, with steps rising in perfect intervals and corners cut with mechanical precision. Sonar scans show symmetrical platforms, road-like paths, and what appears to be a central pyramid. For decades, scientists debated whether Yonaguni was natural or man-made, but when marine geologists studied the tool marks and 90-degree cuts, they found grooves consistent with chiseling, not erosion. If true, it must have been built before 10,000 BCE, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower, during the final years of the Ice Age. That would make it one of the oldest man-made structures on Earth, a sunken testament to a civilization erased from the map of history. And yet, the mystery does not end there. From the Himalayas to Lake Titicaca, from Malta to Easter Island, the same signature appears, megaliths carved as though by one mind. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons lie scattered like the remains of a shattered machine. Each bears drill holes so precise that even modern engineers struggle to replicate them. Microscopic analysis shows spiral grooves, the hallmark of high-speed rotary tools, yet the site dates to 12,000 years ago. At Giza, the granite boxes inside the Serapeum show laser-straight interiors polished to within thousandths of an inch. How could civilizations separated by oceans and time all display the same mastery of stone? Archaeologists argue, propose, dismiss, but the stones do not argue back. They stand as evidence of a language we have forgotten, one written not in words but in geometry, proportion, and vibration. A universal grammar of architecture, echoing through time. What bound these distant builders together? They used no written script, yet they shared the same sacred ratios, the golden mean, the 3-4-5 triangle, the same celestial orientations toward Orion, Sirius, and the solstices. In every corner of the ancient world, the monuments point to the heavens, as though guided by a resonance, a frequency the earth itself once sang. It's as if these sites were not independent projects, but nodes in a global network, a symphony of stone vibrating across continents. Some physicists and archaeoacousticians have begun testing this idea. Inside Newgrange in Ireland and the Hypogeum of Malta, they found that low-frequency sounds at 110 Hz cause the walls to resonate, producing a state of altered awareness in the human brain. At Göbekli Tepe and Sacsayhuamán, the chambers amplify certain tones, as if the builders had tuned their sanctuaries to the planet's own heartbeat. Maybe these monuments were not meant merely to endure, but to remember, to hold vibration, to echo through cataclysm and time, until we, much later, would stumble upon them and ask the same question. Who built these, and why did they stop? No one knows what ended their work. Perhaps it was fire from the sky, perhaps water from the deep. A night of global erasure when the architects of stone were swallowed by silence and only their work remained to speak for them. The world began again, but the resonance remained, buried in the bones of the earth, waiting for us to listen. Every civilization carries within it a single unspoken fear that the world will wash it away, and in every ancient story that fear returns as water. The earth has drowned before. Around 12,800 years ago, the last ice age ended not with a quiet thaw, but with fire, a catastrophe written into the planet's skin. Fragments of a shattered comet, the same whose traces linger in the Greenland ice cores, rained across the northern hemisphere. Each fragment struck with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs. Forests from Canada to Europe ignited, their ashes darkening the sky. Dust clouds circled the globe, blocking sunlight for years. Temperatures plummeted, ice that had covered continents began to melt in violent floods. Rivers of water and flame raced toward the sea, and in a single generation, oceans rose by more than 100 meters. This event, known to science as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, did more than end an ice age. It ended a world. The evidence lies everywhere if we know where to look. In Greenland's frozen layers, geologists find nanodiamonds, tiny crystals formed only in cosmic explosions. In North America, the black mat layer, a thin band of charcoal, soot and melted glass, marks the same moment in time. Beneath it, mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats. Above it, nothing. No tools, no art, no villages. It is as if life itself paused, as if the earth took a deep breath before beginning again. Satellite images of the Scablands in Washington state reveal canyons hundreds of miles long, carved not by rivers, but by single floods. Walls of water surging higher than skyscrapers. In the Missoula Basin of Montana, ripple marks still scar the hillsides, each the height of a 10-story building, frozen waves of a vanished ocean. In Canada, meltwater channels run for hundreds of kilometers, cut through solid granite like veins opened by a cosmic blade. Across the Atlantic, the British Isles were severed from Europe by the same deluge. The world as our ancestors knew it was rewritten overnight. To the people who survived, it must have felt like divine punishment. And so, they told stories, not of science, but of survival. Across cultures, across millennia, the same memory repeats. In Mesopotamia, the god Ea warns Utnapishtim of the flood and bids him build an ark. In the Hebrew scriptures, Noah gathers the seeds of life. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha sail a wooden chest as the mountains disappear beneath the sea. In India, Manu is warned by a fish, a Matsya, the first avatar of Vishnu, that the waters will rise. And in China, Emperor Yu the Great labours to drain the deluge and restore order to the land. Different names, different gods, but the same voice whispering through time. Something immense came from the sky, and the world we knew ended. Even in the Americas, the memory survived. The Hopi tell of a previous world destroyed by flood, and of those who escaped underground to wait for the waters to fall. The Maya speak of an age when the sky collapsed and the earth was submerged. In Australia, Aboriginal Dreamtime legends recall fire falling from the heavens, followed by a wave that swallowed the coastlines. When myths repeat across continents that never touched, they are no longer just stories. They are evidence, the oral record of an extinction. Imagine standing on a shore that no longer exists, watching your mountains dissolve into mist, the air thick with sulphur and rain, lightning without thunder, the horizon swallowed by a wall of black water, entire continents erased, and with them every monument, every record, every proof of who we were before. What do you build when everything has fallen? You build memory. You carve what cannot drown. Those who survived, the keepers of the old world, moved inland, chasing the rivers that had become new seas. In the highlands of Anatolia, they built Göbekli Tepe, a stone calendar to mark the sky that had betrayed them. In the deserts of Africa, at Nabta Playa, they tracked the stars to predict the floods. They no longer trusted the heavens, they measured them. And perhaps in the depths of the Atlantic, their greatest city was lost forever. Atlantis, Plato called it, a vast island empire beyond the pillars of Heracles, richer than any kingdom, its people descended from the gods themselves. He said it perished in a single day and night of misfortune. Modern oceanographers dismiss it as allegory, yet sonar readings from the Azores Plateau show ridges and terraces that could once have stood above the sea. Off the coast of Cuba, deep-sea explorers found symmetrical ruins half a mile beneath the surface. Pyramid-like structures built of granite blocks, arranged in grid-like streets. Carbon dating is inconclusive, but if genuine, they predate any known civilization. Maybe Atlantis was never one city at all, but the memory of many, a symbolic echo of every metropolis swallowed by the flood. When the waters finally receded, the survivors scattered, to Egypt, to Mesopotamia, to the Indus Valley. They carried stories, numbers, constellations. And from those fragments, the first civilizations rose upon the ruins of the drowned. The architects were gone, but their geometry remained, their alignment to Orion, their reverence for Sirius, their belief that the heavens were a mirror of Earth. It was knowledge encoded not in words, but in angles and stone. Today, sonar and satellite mapping have uncovered entire coastlines buried beneath the sea, from Doggerland in the North Sea to the Sunderland Shelf between Indonesia and Malaysia to the Gulf of Khambat in India, where ruins stretch for miles under the waves. Every discovery redraws the map of prehistory, and every ruin whispers the same truth. Our world is older than we remember. The ocean has no memory. It erases, dissolves, devours. But the stone beneath it does. In caves, in mountains, in the high deserts of the world, that memory still sleeps. Etched into rock, carved into geometry, waiting for the tides of time to fall again. And sometimes, when the seas recede just far enough, when the wind scrapes away a layer of sand, the earth begins to whisper. The names it buried, the songs of cities that once stood where now only water moves. The flood did not only erase them, it preserved them in silence, because memory, like stone, can never truly drown. When the waters calmed, the survivors began again, but they built their memories in places that would one day betray them, at the edge of the desert, at the rim of the sea, on the trembling fault lines between sky and abyss. And when the world shifted once more, those cities sank back into silence. Beneath the blue shimmer of the Mediterranean, off the delta of the Nile, lies the ghost of Thonis-Heracleion, a name half Greek, half Egyptian, once spoken with reverence by sailors who believed they were entering the gate of the gods. It was a city of harbours and temples, a crossroads between worlds. Here Nile met sea. Here the pharaohs of Egypt met the traders of Greece, Phoenicia and Crete. 1,000 years before Cleopatra, ships passed through its canals beneath golden statues of Ammon and Isis, their reflections shimmering over the water like constellations adrift on earth. Then one night the ground liquefied. The city slid downward, not destroyed by war or fire, but by earth liquefaction, when water-saturated soil suddenly turns to fluid under pressure. The Nile's delta gave way, and the city that had ruled the tides was swallowed by them. Columns fell upright into the sand. Sphinxes vanished into silt. Temples sank like anchors. For more than 2,000 years, the name of Thonis-Heracleion survived only in myths. Until the year 2000, when marine archaeologist Frank Goddio and his team found hints of masonry beneath the waves off Alexandria's coast. Sonar imaging revealed grids and courtyards buried in sediment. Divers descended, their beams of light cutting through green water, and there, rising from the sea floor, stood colossal statues of kings and queens, frozen mid-stride, their stone robes drifting in the current like ghosts returning to the surface. Among the finds were bronze coins, ritual altars, and the remains of a temple to Aphrodite, its entrance guarded by statues still upright after 20 centuries underwater. Jars sealed with resin still held traces of oil and grain, offerings made to deities now sleeping beneath coral. It was as if time itself had held its breath, preserving the city in a glass coffin of sand and silence. Every artifact spoke of a moment when Egypt and Greece shared not just trade, but belief, a convergence of worlds lost to the waves. To the east, across the endless dunes of Arabia, another civilization hides not beneath the sea, but beneath the sand, a buried world shimmering beneath the mirage. Archaeologists in the Khaybar region of Saudi Arabia recently uncovered the remains of Al-Nata, a walled oasis city that flourished nearly 4,500 years ago. Satellite surveys show rectangular streets and multi-story dwellings, their foundations tracing perfect geometric lines. In a land once thought empty, ancient aquifers once fed gardens, wells, and irrigation systems, a feat of engineering far ahead of its time. Excavations revealed staircases, clay seals, and painted ceramics bearing motifs reminiscent of Mesopotamian trade goods. Some believe it was part of the lost Nabatean network, others think it was even older, a remnant of a forgotten civilization that mapped the desert like seafarers once mapped the sea. The walls of Al-Nata were not for beauty, but survival. They were defense against the shifting dunes, against drought, and perhaps against memory itself, as if the earth were testing humanity, seeing if we could rebuild what had once been lost. Nomads became settlers, herders became farmers, and once again architecture became the language of endurance. But in time the sands moved, and Al-Nata fell back into silence, its rooftops collapsing into the dust, its wells sealing beneath centuries of wind. Farther east, beyond the Arabian Sea, the waves conceal a legend whispered for millennia. Dwarka, the city of Krishna, said to have been built by the gods and sunk by their tears. For centuries it was myth, until National Institute of Oceanography teams began mapping the Gulf of Kambat off the coast of Gujarat. There, 120 feet beneath the surface, their sonar scans revealed rectilinear formations. Streets, walls, and stepped wells aligned like a planned metropolis. Divers recovered pottery, sculpture fragments, and stone anchors. Carbon dating of the samples pointed to an age near 9,000 years, centuries before Egypt's first pyramid. If the dates hold true, Dwarka would be among the earliest urban settlements ever built. A city erased not by conquest, but by the rising seas that followed the last glacial melt. Hindu texts describe it vividly. Gilded palaces, shining like suns, bridges that link to the heavens, and 7 cities of Dwarka, each sinking one by one into the sea. Perhaps these were poetic metaphors, or perhaps they were eyewitness records of an age when the coastline itself vanished beneath the ocean's breath. The evidence mounts elsewhere too. In the Gulf of Cambay, sonar imagery reveals vast ruins spread across 25 square kilometres. In Doggerland, once connecting Britain to mainland Europe, submerged forests and tools of Mesolithic hunters still lie preserved in mud. And off Cuba's western shelf, robotic submersibles have mapped structures arranged in perfect grids, with pyramidal formations 1,000 feet below the surface. A city-sized mystery resting in perpetual twilight. Each of these cities, Thonis-Heracleion, Al-Nata, Dwarka, tells the same quiet story. That civilization is older, more fragile, and far more cyclical than we dare admit. They did not vanish by coincidence. They fell where water meets land, the threshold where the earth remembers to begin again. Perhaps their builders understood something we've forgotten, that permanence is an illusion, and eternity belongs not to what survives, but to what can return. Because even now, when divers sweep their beams across the columns of Thonis-Heracleion, when archaeologists brush the sand from Al-Nata's streets, or when submersibles glide silently through the ruins of Dwarka, the same pulse stirs beneath the surface. The hum of the planet reclaiming its design. It is a rhythm beyond empire, a geometry beyond time, a memory of the world before Egypt, still trying to rise through the sand and the sea. Far from the deserts and the drowned coasts, another kind of silence covers an older world, not sand, but leaves. Beneath the endless green of the Amazon lies a continent of ghosts, its memories buried not by water, but by the forest that grew to hide them. For centuries, explorers searched these jungles for myth. They called it El Dorado, the city of gold, and they died chasing it, never realizing that what they sought was real, but made of earth, not metal. When the conquistadors crossed the rivers of South America in the 16th century, they wrote of cities shining with stone walls, and fields so vast that they seemed to stretch into infinity. Their reports were dismissed as madness, fever dreams of men lost in the green inferno. For centuries, modern historians insisted that the Amazon was too poor, its soil too thin to sustain complex life. But now, the forest itself has begun to speak. From the skies above Bolivia, Brazil and Peru, Satellites armed with LiDAR, light detection and ranging, have peeled away the canopy to reveal what human eyes could never see. Hidden beneath the foliage are straight lines where no natural process could draw them, causeways, geometric plazas, and pyramids rising from the jungle floor. They form a network of urban centres once belonging to the Casarabe culture, which thrived between 500 and 1400 CE, long before the first European ships breached the shores of South America. In 2022, researchers published their findings in Nature magazine. They mapped over 20 interconnected cities, some covering areas larger than modern-day London. The settlements, such as Kotoka, Landiva, and Javeri, were linked by raised causeways stretching for kilometres, engineered to stay above seasonal floods. Rectangular plazas and pyramidal mounds rose above reservoirs, while canals branched outward like veins, feeding an ecosystem that merged civilization with nature. From above, their layout forms familiar patterns: circles within squares, cross-axes aligned with the solstices, and terraces echoing the path of the stars. The same sacred geometry found in Egypt, Angkor, and the Andes, repeating as if drawn from an ancient and universal blueprint. These were not small villages of scattered tribes. They were urban centres, planned, irrigated, and engineered. Thousands of people lived here, sustained by Terra, Preta, or black earth, a man-made soil enriched with charcoal, bone, and organic waste. Even after centuries, it remains fertile, a living technology that regenerates itself, proof that the Casarabe had mastered sustainable agriculture long before industrial science rediscovered the idea. Under microscopes, the particles of Terra Preta still shimmer with traces of microbial life, a self-renewing ecosystem in which the jungle and humanity breathed as one organism. When Spanish chroniclers first encountered the Amazon, they wrote of maize, fruits, and root crops stretching to the horizon, of people moving along rivers wide as seas, and of palaces made of carved wood that glittered in torchlight. They told of moats surrounding ceremonial platforms, and roads broad enough for 10 men to walk abreast. No one believed them. Modern science dismissed these stories as delusion, until LiDAR drew the same roads across the jungle's invisible skin. Archaeologists now walk among these rediscovered sites. They find stairways of compacted clay, stone alignments facing celestial north, and pyramidal structures designed to withstand floods and droughts alike. The builders knew the rhythm of the earth, when the waters would rise, when the rains would fail, and they built accordingly, their architecture moving in harmony with the breath of the planet. In the soil, they also find patterns of raised fields and canals, an agricultural network so intricate that it may have supported millions across the basin. Not chaos, but design. A civilization that understood resilience as balance, not conquest. Each city connected to another through water and sound, mirroring the constellations above them, as if the stars themselves were the architects of the jungle. But then came silence. Around the 15th century, the Casarabe disappeared. Their canals silted over, their plazas filled with roots. Vines crept across the walls like green hands reclaiming a forgotten prayer. Perhaps climate shifted again. The forest thickened, the rains returned, or perhaps disease arrived on the winds from across the Atlantic, carried by the earliest European contact. Whatever the cause, the jungle closed over them like water over a sunken city. The rainforest did what it always does. It absorbed, it preserved, it forgot, and remembered at once. Even through the canopy, the pattern endures. LiDAR imaging reveals symmetry still glowing beneath the leaves, a geometry of memory, the same proportions that once defined Göbekli Tepe, Nabta Playa, and Giza. How could such design stretch across oceans and epochs unless the blueprint itself was older than civilization? Unless the architects who once measured stars in stone had already walked here, long before the jungle grew to hide their footprints, When archaeologists compare the orientation of the Amazonian plazas to the night sky of 500 CE, they find alignments with Orion's belt and the Pleiades, the same celestial markers sacred to builders across the ancient world. Coincidence, perhaps? Or the faint echo of a memory that refused to die, a resonance carried by the earth itself, passed from one age to another through geometry and instinct. And today, as drones trace invisible roads beneath the trees, the jungle begins to yield its secrets again. Archaeologists have only uncovered a fraction of what lies below. An estimated 90% of Amazonian ruins remain hidden, camouflaged by the very life they once nurtured. Each discovery rewrites the story of human origins, proving that complexity and intelligence were never the gifts of a single river or continent, but the inheritance of a species that learned to build with nature, not against it. Maybe the forest itself is a kind of archive, its roots wrapped around temples and stairways, its vines tracing the outlines of pyramids, its trees breathing through the memory of what came before. For in every rustle of leaf, in every shadow of green, the past still moves. Not every civilization looked to the stars. Some turned inward, into the earth itself. While others built towers and pyramids to touch the heavens, there were those who carved entire worlds beneath their feet, as if they knew the sky would one day fall again. In the heart of Cappadocia, under the volcanic plains of central Anatolia, a farmer once struck his shovel against stone. Behind the wall of his cellar was a small hollow, and beyond it, darkness. He followed it, candle trembling in his hand, the air thick and cold as breath held by the planet itself. The passage twisted downward, branching into rooms, and when he reached the bottom, he realized this was not a cave. It was a city. That discovery, in 1963, revealed Derinkuyu, an underground metropolis descending 18 stories, over 200 feet below the surface. Corridors wide enough for carts, storage rooms for grain and wine, stables for animals, chapels carved with altars, and ventilation shafts that brought fresh air from the surface. At its height, Derinkuyu could shelter 20,000 people, an entire civilization turned inward. Massive circular stones guarded the entrances, rolling doors that could be sealed from within, each weighing up to half a ton. No enemy could enter, nothing unwanted could leave. It was as if this city had been designed for a world where the danger came not from man, but from the sky. No one knows who built it. The upper tunnels contain pottery from the early Christian era, but the lowest levels, rougher, older, colder, date back to at least 2000 BCE and possibly much earlier. Some archaeologists attribute it to the Hittites, others to Phrygians, but there are signs that the core passages may predate both. The rock-cut chambers showing erosion consistent with thousands of additional years. To some researchers, Derinkuyu was not simply a refuge from invaders, it was a refuge from something global, something older, perhaps the very cataclysm that ended the last ice age. Derinkuyu is not alone. Across Cappadocia, more than 200 subterranean cities honeycomb the volcanic rock: Kaymakli, Özkonak, Tatlarin, Marza, all connected by long tunnels stretching for miles. When mapped by 3D scanners, they form a network so vast it could hide tens of thousands of people, a secret civilization beneath the one we know. Each was engineered with the same care as a temple above: smooth walls, right angles, ventilation shafts, and sophisticated water systems that kept the air cool and drinkable. This was not chaos carved in fear, it was order, design, and precision. Archaeologists found underground wineries, schools, and even stone channels leading to hidden cisterns, an entire society prepared to survive in darkness. Why? Because the surface could no longer be trusted. The plains above Cappadocia were once a fiery landscape of erupting volcanoes and shifting ash fields. But some suggest another reason, that after the great floods of the younger Dryas, When storms and fire scoured the earth, the survivors went below to wait for calm. Perhaps the architects of Göbekli Tepe had descendants, builders who remembered that the safest way to rebuild was to burrow into the memory of the earth itself. This pattern, the world below, appears again and again across continents. In Egypt, radar scans beneath the Giza plateau show shafts and tunnels extending for hundreds of meters, some connecting the Great Pyramid to hidden chambers below. In Malta, the Hal-Saflieni hypogeum winds through 3 underground levels carved 6,000 years ago, its chambers resonating perfectly at 110 Hz, a frequency that affects human consciousness, producing sensations of weightlessness and calm. In the Andes, beneath the ruins of Tiwanaku, archaeologists discovered subterranean galleries and stone conduits large enough to crawl through, leading toward what locals called the mouth of the earth. Even in the deserts of Peru and Chile, legends speak of tunnels linking distant temples through the underworld, as though the ancient engineers understood that the ground itself could carry sound, vibration, and memory. Across the Pacific, in Central America, Maya priests described the Xibalba, the place of fear, a network of caves where the gods tested the souls of men. When modern divers explored the cenotes of the Yucatan, they found shrines and bones deep within the flooded passages, offerings placed there as if to honor the underworld's guardians. The same belief surfaces again in Asia. The Hindus spoke of Patala, a realm beneath the surface, ruled by serpent beings called Nagas. Buddhist texts tell of Agartha, a radiant kingdom hidden below the Himalayas, connected to the world above by shafts of light and sound. In Tibet, monks still chant of Shambhala, a place of refuge for those who remember the old knowledge. Different names, same myth, that beneath the world of men lies another world, ancient and enduring. Could these stories be fragments of truth? Could they describe not fantasy but memory, distorted echoes of an age when humanity truly did retreat underground to outlast a planetary storm? If the surface was once uninhabitable, then perhaps the great myths of Patala and Agartha are recollections of our ancestors' time in hiding. And if they left anything behind, records, devices, even DNA, it might still rest there, sealed within the stone. Modern technology has begun to search for it. Ground-penetrating radar and muon imaging, the same methods used at Giza, now reveal voids beneath ancient cities from Turkey to Peru. A recent survey under Cappadocia detected a tunnel extending 75 kilometers, a subterranean highway connecting Derinkuyu to Kaimakli. Some tunnels run so deep they approach the water table, suggesting the builders understood the geology of the region better than we do today. What were they looking for down there? Shelter? Energy? Or perhaps the memory of a world they once lost above? If the earth above forgets, perhaps the earth below remembers. And in those dark chambers, sealed for millennia, our ancestors may have left something more than ruins. A record, a warning, or the seed of civilization itself, waiting for us to dig deep enough to find it. The Great Pyramid of Giza has stood for 45 centuries, its angles fixed like a compass in stone. For generations we thought we knew it, a tomb, a monument, a mystery solved. But the deeper we look, the more it behaves like a door, one that has never truly been opened. It began, as many revelations do, with a hum. A low, almost imperceptible vibration recorded beneath the sands of Giza. Archaeologists dismissed it as wind, as shifting stone, until instruments placed by seismic engineers showed that the vibration came from within the bedrock itself. Something beneath the plateau was resonating. In 2017, scientists from the Scan Pyramids project began using a revolutionary imaging method, muography, a technology that tracks subatomic particles called muons, which pass through stone but slow when they encounter empty space. Over months of scanning, data from muon detectors, radar tomography, and infrared thermography revealed shadows where no chambers should exist. At first, the team thought it was an error, but the pattern persisted. A vast hollow void stretching above the Grand Gallery, large enough to hold a passenger jet. They called it the Big Void, but no one knew what it was for. It was neither a burial chamber nor a structural cavity. Its symmetry suggested intention, not accident. Whatever its purpose, it had been sealed for thousands of years, untouched since the pyramid's completion. Further surveys traced vertical lines descending below the plateau, revealing a honeycomb of tunnels and shafts that twist into the limestone for thousands of feet. Some terminate abruptly, others spiral downward like wells. Ground-penetrating radar found moisture signatures far below the desert floor, a possible aquifer feeding hidden cavities. Others extend beyond the base of the Great Pyramid, intersecting with pathways beneath the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure. It was as if the Giza complex were not three separate monuments, but one connected structure, a single machine buried beneath the desert. Italian and Scottish researchers, collaborating under a project called Kaffa, named after the supposed builder of the second pyramid, mapped 8 vertical shafts leading toward 2 immense chambers wider than a city square. Beneath them, the instruments recorded hollow resonance, a sound like breath moving through a throat of stone. When computer models simulated sound frequencies within the pyramid's architecture, the chambers amplified specific tones, especially those corresponding to 432 Hz, a frequency linked to resonance with the Earth's magnetic field. Was this coincidence? Or had the ancient engineers known exactly what they were tuning? Ancient texts may hold the key. The Egyptian Book of the Dead speaks of the Hall of Amenti, a subterranean realm where the souls of kings journey between worlds after death. Temple inscriptions describe the Hidden One who sleeps under the plateau and the serpent roads that connect the pyramids below. The priests wrote that these paths were carved by the gods to channel energy from the heart of the earth into the sky. For millennia, such verses were dismissed as poetry. But what if they were memory, encrypted instruction from those who once built Giza not as a tomb, but as a transmitter? Modern physics has begun to find unsettling parallels. When researchers modelled the pyramid's electromagnetic behaviour, they discovered that radio waves concentrate inside its hidden cavities, amplifying in the very spots where the voids were detected. The pyramid, it seems, acts as a resonant chamber, focusing energy rather than storing it. Some scientists believe it stands at a magnetic anomaly, a node of telluric currents, natural electromagnetic lines that flow through the Earth's crust. If true, then Giza is positioned not for symbolism, but for function, a monument aligned to the planet's pulse. Ancient builders may have used water to enhance that power. The nearby Temple of the Sphinx contains erosion marks suggesting that underground aquifers once flowed beneath the plateau. Electrical engineers have proposed that moving water could generate piezoelectric energy within the limestone, turning the pyramid into a natural generator, a colossal battery of stone and sound. When water levels fluctuated, the structure might have hummed, its vibration carrying energy through the hidden tunnels that link the 3 pyramids. A literal network of resonance. Such an idea seems impossible until you realize that the same principle governs our own modern power grids, radio antennas, and resonant towers. Perhaps the ancients understood what we are only rediscovering, that energy flows in patterns of geometry, and geometry is the bridge between matter and vibration. Why else would so many civilizations build on the same alignments and proportions? The ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica, and the temples of Angkor all follow the same mathematical relationships found in Giza. It is as though the builders were reactivating an older design, a planetary architecture transcending empire and language. The excavations at Giza continue under heavy guard. Access to the lowest tunnels remains forbidden, controlled by the Egyptian Antiquities Authority and military oversight. Yet whispers persist. Inscriptions found on hidden walls, sarcophagi sealed so precisely that they hum faintly when touched, and corridors curving beyond the reach of scanners. A few claim to have seen light sources still flickering below, luminescent algae or something else. Others describe small metallic discs recovered from sealed chambers, etched with concentric patterns that resemble circuits. Officially, nothing exists. Unofficially, the myth grows stronger. Maybe the old stories were never wrong, only misunderstood. Maybe the gods who carved the serpent roads were not deities at all, but engineers from an earlier epoch of humanity. The hidden architects who encoded their knowledge in limestone, frequency, and light. If they truly existed, this is where their last blueprint sleeps. Not above ground, where sand and time erode, but deep within the body of the earth itself, where vibration does not die, it only waits. There are moments in history when an idea seems to echo across millennia, as if thought itself were a vibration moving through time. And sometimes that vibration finds a human being who can hear it. One such echo began in the early 1900s, when a man named Nikola Tesla built a tower on Long Island and tried to awaken the Earth. He called it Wardenclyffe, a transmitter meant to draw power not from coal or oil, but from the planet's own electromagnetic heartbeat. Tesla believed the Earth was alive, a resonant sphere that could sing, and if one could learn its frequency, its pulse, then energy could be transmitted anywhere, wirelessly, endlessly, as it may have been in some forgotten past. He imagined not a world of wires and burning fuel, but one of resonance, a planet where every home could draw electricity directly from the ground beneath its feet, where towers would hum like tuning forks and the air itself would carry power. To many of his peers, Tesla was a dreamer, but his dream sounded eerily familiar. Tesla studied the Great Pyramid of Giza not as a tomb, but as a machine. He measured its proportions, the golden ratio, its alignment to magnetic north, its geometry resonating with what we now call the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic frequency of Earth, 7.83 Hz. He was convinced the pyramid was built as a colossal resonant amplifier, gathering energy from the planet's electric field and distributing it through its stone body. Modern physicists may laugh, but the evidence refuses to fade. When electromagnetic waves of specific lengths are directed at a model of the Great Pyramid, the energy concentrates in its internal chambers and channels downward through the base. To most scientists, this is a coincidence of shape and scale. Yet somehow, the same geometry appears again and again, in the temples of Teotihuacan, in the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, in the pyramids of Mesoamerica. Different cultures, different continents, and yet all built as if following the same harmonic code. Every civilization leaves behind its science disguised as myth. In Egypt, the gods spoke through sound, tones that could move matter, vibrations said to open gates to the stars. In India, the Vimana texts describe flying craft powered by the control of frequency and mercury. In Tibet, monks still chant in low harmonics capable of making stone bowls vibrate, their voices shaking the air until dust lifts from the ground. And in the Andes, legends tell of the priests of Viracocha, who sang to the mountains until the stones flowed like water. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as metaphors. Now, acoustic engineers confirm that certain frequencies can indeed reduce friction between materials, making heavy objects almost weightless. It seems the ancients were not only poets, they were physicists. What if these stories are fragments of one truth, that sound, frequency, and geometry are not separate sciences, but a single language, the language of the Earth itself? A universal code through which energy and consciousness once communicated freely. The hidden architects seem to understand this. They built not only for symmetry or beauty, but for tone, Every chamber, corridor, and column was tuned like the strings of an instrument. At Karnak, the hyperstyle halls create a resonance that amplifies chanting into pure vibration. At Chavin de Huanta in Peru, underground canals once filled with water produce deep harmonics that mimic the sound of thunder. And in Machu Picchu, certain stones hum when struck, each resonating at different pitches, a literal stone symphony. To the builders, sound was not an art form. It was an energy source, a key to moving matter, perhaps even to altering consciousness. Tesla echoed the same vision. He believed that consciousness itself could act as a receiver, that the human mind might vibrate in harmony with the same frequencies as lightning, magnetism, and music. In his writings, he claimed that the brain is a resonant body, and that when tuned correctly, it could interact with the planet's electromagnetic field. Energy and spirit to him were one and the same. He once said, "If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Those words, carved in his notebooks, could just as easily have been written on the walls of an Egyptian temple. Even modern research lends unexpected support. NASA scientists have recorded Earth's ionosphere vibrating like a bell after solar storms. The same phenomenon Tesla predicted. Infrasound studies at ancient sites show that monuments like Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid amplify frequencies in the 7 to 15 Hz range, the same range that affects human brainwaves, creating states of calm, focus, or even altered awareness. It seems the ancients may have known how to build structures that tuned the mind as well as the earth. Perhaps the forgotten technology of the ancients was never about metal or machinery. Maybe it was about coherence, the harmony between matter and intention, between human consciousness and the planet's vibration. A science that required not only knowledge, but reverence. When Tesla looked at the Great Pyramid, he didn't see death. He saw design, a blueprint that could make the earth sing again. And perhaps through him, the architect spoke once more, reminding us that energy was never lost, only misaligned. Look around our world today. Cities humming with unseen frequencies, cell towers pulsing through the atmosphere, machines vibrating without harmony. We are surrounded by resonance, but we have forgotten its rhythm. Maybe the final lesson of both Tesla and the ancients is not how to harness energy, but how to listen to it. Because every sound leaves a shadow, every structure keeps an echo, and the earth, still humming at 783 Hz, remembers everything we have forgotten. Everywhere the architects built, they left behind a code, a pattern too precise to be chance, too universal to be coincidence. It appears in temples, in pyramids, in stone circles, and even in the invisible geometry of lost cities. Numbers repeat like a heartbeat beneath history. 432, 18, 72, 36, 9. The mathematics of the cosmos carved into the bones of the earth. At Giza, the pyramid's height once equaled 1/1000th of the Earth's distance to the Sun. Its base aligns within 1/20th of a degree to true north. At Angkor Wat, the dimensions of its towers and courtyards mirror the precession of the equinoxes, the slow, 25,120-year wobble of the Earth's axis. At Stonehenge, the circle of lintels aligns perfectly with the solstices, turning sunrise and sunset into an eternal calendar. And at Teotihuacan, the Avenue of the Dead maps the orbits of Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, as if the builders were constructing a model of the solar system in stone. These are not the coincidences of artisans. They are the signatures of engineers who thought in orbits and ratios, who understood that geometry was not invented, it was remembered. And that memory, encoded in proportion and rhythm, is what allowed civilizations to rise again after every flood, after every fire. Everywhere, the same language recurs. Spirals, triangles, fractals, harmonics. Each civilization, separated by oceans and millennia, spoke in the same silent grammar. From the spiraled carvings at Newgrange in Ireland to the fractal city plans of Benin and Angkor, from the flower of life pattern at Abydos to the mandalas of Tibet, the builders were quoting from a manual older than time. They called it sacred geometry, but perhaps it is better understood as the architecture of memory, the way the universe thinks through matter. For when matter vibrates, it forms shape, and when shape holds resonance, it becomes alive. Modern science confirms what the ancients seemed to know intuitively. Geometry governs everything. The orbits of planets, the patterns of hurricanes, the curve of a shell, the swirl of a galaxy, all obey the same underlying laws. The Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, 1.618, the phi spiral, these are not human inventions. They are the mathematics of existence itself. Even life follows this script. The double helix of DNA spins in the same rhythm as the nautilus shell, the same pattern found in sunflower seeds and the temples of Giza. As above, so below, the old Hermetic law. It's as though all living things, from atoms to galaxies, are following an ancient blueprint etched into the frequency of reality itself. The architects seem to know this instinctively. Their monuments were not just built upon the earth, they were tuned to it. Giza aligns perfectly with magnetic north. Machu Picchu hums along ley lines that trace the planet's natural electromagnetic grid. Angkor Wat vibrates with the Schumann resonance, the Earth's heartbeat, pulsing at 783 Hz. When plotted on a global map, each sacred site forms part of an invisible lattice, a planetary circuit of energy and information. It is as if the builders were plugging the Earth into itself, weaving an energetic web across continents, a geometric nervous system for the planet. We call them myths, the dragon lines of China, the serpent paths of the Maya, the song lines of Australia, the meridians of the Earth. But what if these legends are not metaphors, but descriptions of something literal? The flow of telluric currents beneath our feet, activated through shape, sound, and intention. In 2018, scientists from Princeton measured geomagnetic spikes around major ancient sites, a faint measurable hum in the Earth's field, strongest near places like Giza, Delphi, and Tiwanaku. Coincidence? Or a whisper of technology too subtle to recognize? Perhaps that is why these structures endure. Stone decays, empires fall, but frequency does not die. It only waits to be recognized again. When we stand within a temple aligned to the stars, our own bodies, full of water, magnetism, and resonance, begin to vibrate in tune with it. It's not just the mind that remembers, it's the matter we're made of. The ancients might have built for that very purpose, to preserve knowledge not in words, but in patterns that time could not erase, because fire destroys scrolls, floods drown libraries, and languages fade. But the earth itself, stone, proportion, alignment, endures. In this sense, every monument is a living document, a message encoded in geometry, translating universal law into architecture. Think of Chartres Cathedral in France, its stained glass arranged in ratios identical to Giza's geometry. Think of Borobudur in Indonesia, whose terraces mirror the shape of a mandala when viewed from above. Think of the great Zimbabwe ruins, whose circular walls pulse with the same phi ratios found in the human ear. Across time, the builders repeated the same truth. Form is language, and language is memory. Today, with satellites and digital mapping, we can finally see what the ancients always saw. A world bound by geometry, every sacred site connected like notes on a cosmic instrument. Draw a line from Easter Island to Giza, from Angkor to Nazca, and they fall upon a single great circle that wraps the Earth. It's as if the planet itself was tuned, its monuments marking chords in a forgotten song. Maybe that is what the architects wanted, to leave a record that could outlast us all. A record that would survive when language failed, when fire erased paper and flood erased memory. A message that could only be read once our science had evolved enough to hear it. Time does not destroy civilizations, it erases their names. The dust that buries a city becomes the clay of another, and the cycle begins again. Each age believes itself to be the first, never realizing it is simply the next verse in a song the earth has been singing since before memory began. We stand now where they once stood, measuring the stars, splitting the atom, calling ourselves advanced. Yet the deeper we dig, the more we find their reflections looking back at us through stone. The precision of Göbekli Tepe, the geometry of Giza, the circuitry of Angkor. We are not discovering the future, we are reawakening the past. Perhaps the architects never vanished. Perhaps they only changed form, their knowledge encoded in the resonance of matter, their designs pulsing quietly beneath the crust, waiting for us to remember how to listen. Every invention, every revelation, every spark of genius that appears without explanation may be the echo of that older intelligence rising through us again. Across myth and science, the message is the same. The universe builds itself through patterns that repeat. Stars are born, worlds emerge, civilizations rise and fall, and then silence, until the pattern stirs once more. Now, as our own world tilts toward change, as ice melts and seas climb the maps of history again, the same boundary begins to draw itself across our time. The younger Dryas was their ending. What will ours be? The Earth remembers more than we imagine. Its crust hums with the vibrations of everything that has ever lived. If the builders of the first world truly mastered resonance, then their legacy still moves through the magnetic field that surrounds us, through the very frequencies that shape our thoughts. We carry their architecture within us, in our bones, in our blood, in the geometry of our DNA. Maybe that is what awakening really means, not discovering something new, but rediscovering what we have always known, to build again, but with awareness, to design not only in stone, but in spirit. And one day, when this cycle closes and the next begins, perhaps another people will walk among our ruins, measure our monuments, and wonder who we were. They will find our towers, our circuits, our signals, and they will call us the architects. Because in the end, we all are the builders, the rememberers, the temporary keepers of the Earth's design. Time is the architect. We are its unfinished plan. If you felt that echo tonight, like this video, share it, and join us as we continue uncovering the hidden patterns of the world's forgotten past.